Thank you all for giving us the time to speak with you today. The counselors have put together a little workshop for you on praise in the classroom. And this is something we all do every day, whether consciously or unconsciously. Often it's just a knee-jerk reaction in the classroom where we say, great job on that assignment, or that was a really smart observation, or you're working really hard, keep it up. It's something that we do constantly, but don't really spend a lot of time thinking about what impact it can have in the classroom. So what we want to do today is really explore what that praise does as far as student achievement and how we can focus our praise so it's more effective. So this first slide, you are smart. How many of you have ever said that to a student? Yeah, I see a lot of hands. So whenever we say you are smart, we often are just saying, okay, they said something really good in class, we want to reward that. So we tell them that they're smart because it's nice to hear that. I like to hear that I'm smart. I'm sure most of you like to hear that you're smart. But what we don't think about is what impact this can have on students, not just the one you're telling you are smart, but also the other students in the classroom who may or may not ever get told that they are smart. So this is something I want us to think about a little more in depth. So let's go ahead and split off into your tables that you're at. And I want you to spend 3 minutes now just going over these few items, talking about how many of you have said to students that you're smart, and thinking about what situations you said that, and then what did you really mean when you were saying that, and what impact can it have? And after you're done discussing, we'll come back together as a group. Okay, our 3 minutes are up. So I went around and I heard a few of you talking. It sounds like almost everyone in the room has said this at some point. And the situations we said that were often when a student made a really good observation, did really well on a project or an assignment. And what we meant was good job or something to that effect. So what I want us to think about as we're going through is how we can say good job or you're doing great work without immediately going to this knee-jerk of you are smart. And thinking through what it actually means and what we're trying to encourage in the classroom, and whether it's intelligence we're trying to encourage or hard work that will lead to success. So another thing I want us to think about that's really related to this idea of whether we're praising intelligence or hard work is the idea of whether intelligence is actually changeable. And this is a debate we've read about in science class back when we were school, and something you probably talked about in your education classes, or even maybe as colleagues, after school over a drink. So this is why I want you to talk about your small groups now for 2 minutes, and then again we'll come back together. Okay, your 2 minutes are up. I heard a lot of interesting opinions on this. Some people, most people thought changeable and it's decided by environment, but I did hear some arguments that it's also decided by genetics, and most tables seem to come to some middle ground between these two, which really is probably the most accurate place to be. Anytime we have this dichotomous argument, usually the answer does lie somewhere in the middle. So as far as it being unchangeable and decided by genetics, there is a genetic factor to intelligence. I'm not going to argue that and tell you that that isn't there. There is some predisposition. But the research is very strong that whatever the initial genetic setup may be as far as a person's intelligence, it is changeable. Environment does have an impact. Environment does have an impact. They've done studies looking at twins and separating them and seeing one grows up in an environment with a lot of poverty, without a lot of support, and another grows up in an environment where they have all of these resources, are always provided with books, go to the best preschools, things like that. And there is a difference in how those two develop, and they don't end up in the same place. One of them typically will end up scoring higher on tests, gain better grades in school, and having better life outcomes than the other. So another item that really shows that intelligence is changeable is this idea called the Flynn effect. And you'll notice the chart goes from 32 up to 78. So, some of you may immediately start questioning, well, wait a minute, what about till now? But the really important thing to pick up is that there was change during this time period. And while some of this change may have leveled off at this point, that doesn't mean we can't turn this around and get it to keep going upwards. So starting out when IQ tests were first formulated back in the early 1900s, the average IQ was around 100. But as we progressed, as societies, we've become more industrialized, technology has improved, education has improved, we've seen a trend upwards in IQ scores, not just in the United States, but across the world and all countries. And this has been tied largely to industrialization and development of nations. And a lot of that then is also tied to education, because as countries become more developed, they tend to have stronger education systems, have more mandatory education, and this impact is seen in the average IQ score. So this is great evidence to take back and say, okay, what I do in the classroom really matters and can really have an impact on students.